excited today to be joined by Dr. Red Ruby Scarlet. Dr. Scarlet has been working as an educator in the early education care sector for quite a few years. I won't say how many in case that gives away your age. But she has a heap of qualifications, including a PhD, obviously. That's why she's doctor. And she's also written a wonderful book called Becoming with Art in Early Childhood, which will be on everyone's reading list. So welcome to PD in a Pocket.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm really, really excited to be part of this beautiful conversation.
So, look, I suppose I'd like to ask you first off is why should we be doing art with children, visual art with children in family daycare?
I think, first of all, I just want to say something about the experience of family daycare that's unique to other parts of the profession, particularly around what kind of visual arts you can do, because your home time is a little bit more elastic. You've got a smaller group of children. Those are the things that are actually great conditional or environmental things for really beautiful visual arts to happen. So generally speaking, though, visual arts and children are almost like, if we're talking about visual arts, talking about children and food. Children need food to grow. They need food to be nourished. They need food to live. And visual arts really is, I guess, the vehicle towards all of the ways in which they'll be able to participate, not just in educational experiences, but in life experience, because visual arts is the relationship between how you feel, what you think, and how you express that or learn to express that through colour or line or a particular medium like paint or drawing or something like that.
Okay, so sometimes, we know some of the reasons why some family daycare educators are reluctant to engage in, I suppose, experimental is the wrong word, to engage intensely in art with children. Like most family daycare educators will have an art table where children will be able to do things, but they don't extend it much more than that. Do you have any ideas of why some educators are reluctant to explore heavily with art?
There's probably three things. The first thing is, I think the outside pressures of what non-early childhood people think is good art or the right kind of art to do for children. So we end up with a lot of paper plate stuff or stencils or things like that because there's a societal understanding that if they do that, that's a great learning experience. I think the second thing is that in the Cert 3, and some people have done diplomas, the focus on arts is like a teeny tiny touch. I don't think that we prepare people well in pre-service situations to A, give people skills and to B, give people confidence to try different things. And the third thing is, I know, I've done lots and lots of art workshops over the years, and the most common response that people have when I ask them about why they struggle with doing visual arts is that they're scared or they've had a bad experience themselves in their childhood or in their educational experience. So that idea of confidence is, well, I'm not an artist, therefore I can't do art. And I guess the message I've been trying to get across through the book Becoming with Art and also the series that I have that's called Art for Educators is that we can learn how to do things. You don't have to be an artist to be able to provide really beautiful arts experiences for children where they can succeed, and then you realise, hey, I'm actually quite good at this because I just put these things out, I learned a little bit about how to use them, and then I was able to create this wonderful ongoing learning experience for children.
I think that thing that you said about as adults we may have had something terrible happen to us as children in art that convinced us that we're not artists is one of the reasons why we have to do it so well with this generation of children, so you don't get a bunch of adults, children growing up to be adults who also believe that they can't create art.
Yeah, we don't want to keep that cycle going.
So explain, what you would see as a kind of a great engagement with art, a great way to do art with children, and perhaps a less good way to do art with children?
So I'll give you a couple of examples, like really practical examples. I think that first thing is to bust the stereotype. So it's great to have things on a table for children to do. It's great to have like an easel set up and painting or drawing or those things there. But I think the most successful ways in which I've seen people, particularly in family daycare, do arts practice well is by thinking more broadly across the environment. So, for example, we talk a lot about loose parts, right? Loose parts is a great theory. There's lots of value to it, but it's the way you present things. So if you have a series of matchy container things and you have them all sorted into their colours, and you do the research yourself and with children to say which order should these colours go in for us to understand a rainbow, for example, and you present those things out, that's a process where children are involved in setting up an arts experience. Educators are learning with children to do that. It's all recycled, so it's completely inexpensive. And the visual of that looks extraordinary. I'll send you some photographs to share with people. And then what you have is an opportunity for children to just play with those things and arrange them through colour, through size, through shape, through length, all of those different elements that we already are familiar with. We're confident with that bit. But sometimes I think it's just getting the idea for setting things up that then enable creativity. And the other part that goes with that is people go, but that's so simple. That's where you get the best results with art stuff. When you've got more and more and more, it's an overwhelm. Like imagine if you walked into a studio, there's pencils here, there's paints there, there's all kinds of drawing implements you've never even heard of over there. That would be overwhelm. But if you've got one thing laid out really, really carefully and really beautifully, and you've been involved in that process of laying it out, then the arts experiences are far more meaningful and they become richer because they're really firing up children's imagination. So if you think about drawing, we talk about drawing as if we're going to use a pencil or a texter or a crayon of some sort. When you have these beautiful little recycled materials laid out, obviously you check the safety and size and all of those kinds of things, but you are actually drawing by pattern making, or you are drawing by creating shapes and images and lines out of those very materials. The other great part is you can photograph them, children can photograph them, very practical, very easy, and then you can sort them back so that they're there to be used again for another time. And so I think visual arts kind of get separated out into, that must be a fine motor experience because you're drawing with things, rather than this is a visual art experience because you're playing with colour and you're creating shapes and you might be telling a story about it. And all of that is exactly what visual arts are there to represent. They're there for us to express our thoughts, our feelings, our imagination, and, working things out in our minds, and that's how we express them on paper. That's what children do.
Okay, and on the other side of that, a bad experience, or one bad is the wrong word, one that is less meaningful.
I guess what I think, I talk about the struggle. So what's the struggle with us providing arts experiences? And then what's the struggle for children when they're trying to do them and it doesn't work out, or it becomes a big mess? So it's kind of like the setting up part creates the struggle because the educator's really wanting to do a good job but struggling to do that. In turn, the children then struggle, so it kind of becomes a bit of a flop. And, essentially in early childhood, everything we do, we want people to feel really good about themselves. So being able to approach a situation that is a struggle in a different way then enables children to experience it in a different way. So sometimes it can be, and there was a research paper somebody did about this that talked about sometimes we create all environments, but particularly arts environments, like a supermarket. So there'll be the brushes here, then there'll be paints there, then there'll be crayons here, there'll be pencils here, and there's so much there that then it just becomes a great big mess. And what often happens after that is people give up and say, the children don't respect the space. But I think the thinking beforehand will actually stop that struggle in its tracks. And the thinking beforehand, which is your planning and your planning cycle, is how do I create something small and achievable? So as an educator, I'm going to select some things that I know are going to work really well to help children express themselves. So you might say, I'm just going to have lead pencils out, and I'm going to have white paper today, but I'm going to have the really soft pencils because I know that children really love that experience when a pencil feels creamy and they go over it and over it and over it on the paper. So there's this wonderful kind of sensory experience, if you like, by putting out just those pencils. Then that might go on for a little while and you observe what children do. The next thing is that you might then introduce colour. And so you may even go, right, here's a whole set of pencils, go crazy. Or you might say, let's start with warm colours. We know that there's warm colours and cool colours. That's a really easy thing to learn about. Google warm colours and let's put out warm colours and see what comes from that. Or let's Google cool colours, which can all be done with children, and let's explore cool colours. And then do our drawings look different when we use cool colours? Do we feel different when we use cool colours? For very young children, I know people are always saying, how do you do this with infants? It's interesting to watch what they go for. Do they go for the warm colours and use them? Do they go for the cool colours and use them? So just by bringing everything down to something small and achievable that everybody understands, educators and children, you then have this great opportunity for success in providing those arts experiences. And then it takes away that struggle that then says, oh, it's a mess and it's too much and, I don't know how to do this and blah, 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 blah. So I think it really is about slowing things down and choosing one. We call them elements of design. So colour is one, line is another one, texture is another one, direction is another one. So you can kind of, shape is another one. You can kind of go through and choose those things and think, I'm going to create some experiences around that. The comforting part about working with the elements of design in visual arts is because of the language, you realise, well, actually that's maths as well. There's science in that as well. There's language and literacy in that as well. So art really encapsulates all of the things that that children need to learn, which is quite reassuring and quite exciting, I think. So, so I guess thinking about it like that, slowing it down and making some really deliberate decisions with small achievable things. I really do believe there's quite a lot of pressure on educators to have 50,000 things, and if it doesn't look like a busy environment, then we mustn't be doing our job properly. And that's a real struggle for lots of people, and I know that people feel that pressure. I feel that pressure, and I've got 35 years experience, that I've got to go, hang on a minute, I know better learning is going to come out when I've got something that's really well thought out and it's easy and small and achievable. So for all of those things I've just said, you don't need to be an artist to be able to achieve them. And they look pretty in photos.
Do we need to teach children how to be artists?
Do we need to teach children arts practice? Yes. Do we need to teach children to be artists? My belief is, and you can call me one-eyed, I think every human is a walking piece of artwork. But do we need to teach them arts practices and skills? Absolutely. Now, once again, I know that there's a philosophical tension there, because the minute we say we want to teach children something, we think that it's sitting down and listening and, quite didactic and direct. It's not. There's lots of ways that you can teach children arts practices or skills. Again, with that thinking in mind that I'm going to make this small and achievable, and I'm going to see what happens when I teach children those skills. One example, when I was doing my PhD at Tillman Park, beautiful Paniotta, who is the baby whisperer, we were looking at the types of art practice that the very young children got, and it was big paintbrushes, blob, blob, blob. It was sticking things to paper plates, and, it was a bit of fun, but they lasted 2 seconds. There was no long-term engagement. And so I said to Paniotta, can we try something a little bit different? It might seem a bit wacky, but can we try something different? And I said, when I look at infants, like birth to twos, let's say, what are they expert on? They are expert on tiny because they're the tiniest humans on the planet. They've got the teensy-weенsiest little fingers. They will find that freckle on.
Some babies have got quite chubby fingers.
They do, but they're small. But they will find that piece of glitter on the ground. So they have this kind of incredible capacity to have this connection with tiny. So I said to her, development will tell us that we've got to give them fat things to hold. But what if we tried to do tiny with them? So we gave them teeny tiny little crayons about that big, and we gave them teeny tiny paper about that big. And it was really interesting to see the control that they had, because obviously their fine motor skills have got a long way to develop, but the control that even very young bubbers who weren't walking, they're in high chairs, had in that experience, because they are so used to being small and focused. Then what we did was we tested our theory. We gave them A3 paper and bigger crayons, and of course they went like that, and it was over in 2 seconds. Then we gave them the small paper again, and there was this engagement. And eventually, because we gave them similar experiences, not the same, but similar experiences all the time, those very, very young children were sitting there for periods of up to an hour sometimes, because some of them would cover the whole page. Some of them would do lots of drawings, one after the other, on the teeny tiny paper. And we learned about this expertise. Well, that was our claim, that when we gave them big, it was like this and over in 2 seconds. When we gave them little, it drew them into their own expertise. And so I love that story because it felt like we were doing, taking a bit of a risk. But what we got out of it was not just beautiful. Like you can imagine little tiny lines and how squiggly they would have been, gorgeous. So not only did we get beautiful art, but we learned so much about the children, and we learned so much about ourselves and what gets in the way of doing beautiful art, particularly with young children like that. So
I think that kind of story is really inspiring, because I'm sure a lot of educators listening to us tonight, or watching this video, will go, "Wow, yeah, I want to try that with my children." Can you give me two instances of things that you think have worked really well with the children you've been working with?
Yeah, sure. So, and I'm happy to give you a few other prompts if you think people will find those things helpful. Because the good thing is, when you say use little paper and use little pieces of crayons, tiny pencils, it's not like you're giving a standard thing. So anybody can provide that to children, but you'll get different results. I want to talk a little bit, before I give you two more examples, I just want to talk a little bit about the teaching. So we will, when children are sometimes just picking up the crayons or the pencils, practicing that. And so showing children, oh, I'm going to pick it up like this. Now I'm going to pick it up with all my fingers. Now I'm going to pick it up and put it between these two fingers. So you're kind of giving them ideas about how they might build a relationship with those arts materials. And by doing it together as a little playful moment, that's how the teaching happens. It doesn't happen as in you sit here and put your pencil up and put your paper on the table. So that's one thing. The other thing is that when we're, like if I'm introducing watercolours to children, and I have done this with very young children, right, birth to 5, but always do the work with the infants as well, is that I never draw for children. I never give them outlines. I never give them those kinds of things. But I will go, when I use a watercolour pencil, sometimes I do a line, sometimes I'll do a little wiggle on the page. I'll do it softly, and this time I'm going to press hard because it looks different. And then I'm going to get the watercolour brush and go, and I can make this one lighter here by just putting a little bit of water there, or I can make this one a nice creamy spot because I've got quite a lot of pencil there, and when I swish it around, it's going to make a lovely blob. And so then they get the technique of how to use the watercolour pencil that has two parts to it. But it's also then valuing that it doesn't have to draw a person. They don't have to draw a cat or everybody should draw cats. What am I saying? They don't have to draw a thing. It's the experience of learning the skill of using the arts materials. And what naturally happens for children is that they then go, it will remind them of something. Oh, that looks like my auntie's swimming pool. And then suddenly a swimming pool story will come from it. So it does this beautiful thing of conjuring up imagination by learning the skill of how to use that. And look, obviously I think Google and YouTube are such wonderful resources for 10-minute, 5-minute videos, how to use watercolour pencils. You can always ask me. There's, any of those things, there are always easy ways to find those things out. And it's watching that stuff with children too. It's fun to watch, well, how are we going to use this together? So not being under pressure that you've got to make all these decisions without involving children. So the other thing that I just wanted to say about great experiences is I think the beauty of family daycare, as I said, is you've got a small number of children. The older children will teach the younger children. So just by being together, you get this wonderful experience, because children will have some knowledge of colour, line, shape, all those elements of design. And they'll bring that into the conversation, which is the beautiful language piece that's going on. So the success is that when people might say, oh, that's only for the older children. Because you're in this ideal context, you can teach something to the older children, and the younger children are automatically going to want to be part of that, because it's a clear, beautiful space. There's one thing going on. Your relationship is driving the engagement with that material, and then you get these beautiful outcomes. And in your head you go, it doesn't have to be a thing. They don't have to draw a something or other, knowing that they eventually will. All you have to do is surrender to that encounter, be in that moment with those children, pass on that skill or learn the skill together, and then you get this wonderful instant success. So the third thing I'm going to tell you is a fun way to start. Drawing seems to be the most familiar with people. It also seems to be the one that people have the most about, because, I can't draw. But there are three types of...
Can I just stop you there? Why the inverted commas? Like, some of us can't draw.
Oh, look, the phrase that comes to mind is pants on fire. I think that it depends what you think drawing is. So we think drawing is being able to create a Leonardo da Vinci, and whilst his sketches are lovely, if you think about Indigenous artists, it's a completely different use of the elements of design in terms of how people are represented or what a portrait looks like. So I think the stereotype about what drawing is makes us feel like we can or can't draw, because the minute you put a mark on paper, that's a drawing.
Whoa, okay, mind blown, but keep going.
You're a drawer, Lisa Bryant, I know it. Well, it is, and it's then to value that, because then you'll go, oh, well, if I put another line here, it turns into something else. If I add something else, it's something else. Drawing isn't about making a picture. It's about expressing a feeling, and it's about having a relationship with the material and the moment to produce something. So three fun ways to think about drawing is, and just put out soft lead pencils and just some A4 paper, really simple to start with. They're drawing by observation. So I'll get my glasses, maybe not glasses, I'll get a cup, and I'll draw. I'll say to the children, do you reckon you could draw that by looking at it? This is looking and drawing, looking and drawing. So that's, again, teaching another skill, looking and drawing, which they're kind of doing anyway. If they draw a picture of their house, they've looked at their house, they've drawn their house. But you can give them interesting things to look at, look and draw, look and draw. The second thing is that you then draw by memory. What did you do at the weekend? We went to the park with our dog and we da-da-da-da-da. Now, you might not draw the scene of the park. You might draw the dog. The child might draw the dog, or the dog's foot, or the dog's ear, or a bone, or whatever, goes with that moment. But that still counts as a drawing by memory. And then the last one is drawing by imagination, which we see children do a little bit more when they're kind of older, because they start drawing and then it'll turn into something else. The other part is that then that they'll be into a TV show, or they'll have seen a movie, or grandma's read them a storybook that they love that's got all these wonderful, enchanting fantasy themes in it. And so then that will start to influence their drawings. So thinking about that What it also gives you is something to do. It gives you a framework for analysis. Is this drawing by observation? What skills are involved? We know that developmental stuff. Is this drawing by memory? Is a child telling me something about where they've been or who they're connected with or where they live or something that they love? And then drawing by imagination, I can see that this child's got a wild imagination, or I can see that there's a lot of input from TV there, or I can see that they go for lots of walks in the bush, or so, and then fairies make it into the bush or whatever it is that conjures up their imagination. So that's the beauty of really slowing things down, making them small and achievable, and giving yourself permission to go, that might take me a few goes, but I can definitely learn how to do it.
Okay, that kind of inspires me to go out and do it straight away. One final question, right? Presume I'm an educator that has lead pencils, texters, some paper, and a set of cheap paints on my, for my children to play with. And you've inspired me to maybe explore something a bit more. What are the essential art materials that every family daycare educator's home should have?
There's two parts to that. One is the good old-fashioned, what was the box they had on Play School, the useful box? A useful box of recycled, clean, obviously, recycled materials is essential, because it then enables you to you can draw with fabric, you can draw with string, you can draw with bottle tops, you can draw with those collected items. So that's one piece, but I would have them all, of course, beautifully organised. The second piece is having some lovely soft lead pencils, and they're not too expensive. I think there's a stereotype that really good art stuff is super expensive. I mean, there is some super expensive stuff, but buy relatively good quality and teach the skill, and it will last forever. And the way that I explain that is you can buy textures, a lid gets lost, they get wrecked, you buy the $2 shop ones, they're more likely to get wrecked because they don't do the job. By the time you add up the amount of times you've bought the $2 shop textures, that will equate to 5 packets of really good quality textures. And you can get them you can get not bad ones in like Target. So I'm not talking about hundreds of dollars here. I'm just talking about, a little bit higher end. So I would definitely have soft lead pencils. I would have some nice quality colour pencils. I would have textures I am and are with, because a lot of the drawing that I do with children is with black felt tip stuff, because from an educational perspective, it's like, think about scientific diagrams. They're kind of pencil or ink and paper, that's it. So if we think about working things through in terms of drawing, just having paper, white paper and black outline pens gives the opportunity for children to work things through without the distraction of colour. But at the same time, or as another experience, you want colour to be available. So therefore you'll have some really nice, I don't use crayons with children. I don't really use pastels. I use a medium called Conte. It's a cross between a chalk and a crayon. And again, they're little and children know to care for them. I've had a tin of them for, I don't know, at least 5 years since I've been at Clovelly, and they're being used well, but they've lasted and lasted and lasted, because children use them really well. So I think, main things are have paint that's, like Chroma's a really good brand. It's washes out of clothes, it's ethically made, and it's not too expensive. Get some nice paper and pencils. Use recycled paper wherever you can. And you can talk to children about, this one's a draft, this one's a thinking piece. If we do want to make something special, we might use that paper. But when we're doing lots of drafts, when we're practicing over and over, isn't it good, sustainability-wise, to use some recycled paper so we can practice up all the things that we'd like to express, and then express them on the good one. So I think, pencils, lead pencils for sure, some good quality colour pencils, paper, nice paper, cartridge paper if you want for watercolours, watercolour pencils, and some nice quality paints. But remember, don't have them all out at once. Choose one thing, explore it over and over, and make sure you give yourself, I'm going to do this 5 times before I go, oh, that hasn't worked, I'm going to give up. So the will and the commitment and the relationship are as much as what you'll get out of the medium as what the medium is.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure that people are inspired to get out there and get some of those things immediately and start working with us. Thank you.
Yeah, beautiful. And I'm looking forward to seeing your drawing, Lisa, given that you're about to dash out and start too.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Lisa.